Kelvin Beachum is an NFL player, philanthropist, and investor with a passion for the arts. He's also a dad, a husband, and an influential member of his immediate and global community. In this episode, we discuss his path, passions, and purpose. We explore what primes athletes for success in business, what drives Kelvin to make an impact in combating world hunger and expanding access to education, and how he's overcome tremendous adversity on his road to a long and successful career. If you find this interesting or just want to share some feedback, I'd really appreciate it if you follow, subscribe, give it a review, or comment on any of the platforms. Thanks, and hope you enjoy. I really appreciate you joining me, and I'm really excited to talk to you.
Yep, anytime. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So for starters, I think it would be really interesting to hear if you could paint me a picture about what it was like to grow up, where you grew up, and just what your childhood was like.
Yeah. So grew up in Mahead, Texas, about 6,500 people. Grew up with both parents in the household. Had three siblings. I was the oldest of four. We all played sports, so football, basketball, track. My sisters played volleyball. Both played volleyball. We were heavily involved in the church community as well. So grandfather was a pastor. Mother and father worked in the church as well. So I was fortunate that I had really a really good foundation from an upbringing standpoint to get things started for me.
Did you have people who you really looked up to when you were growing up?
I think for me, I always say that it was my father and my grandfather. I had two great role models of what work ethic looked like from my grandfather, what great work ethic looked like from my father, who were my role models growing up. I used to my mother would always say, you see these, athletes on TV, but they have no idea what you're actually going through. So you need to look at the people around you, and the people around you, knew exactly what you were going through. They were fighting for you. They were working for you. They were attending to your needs. And, that is what a role model, especially growing up where I came from, that was what a role model really meant. Somebody that was actually doing the right things on a consistent basis, continuing to love you and love you with what they were willing to do for you. And, like I said, was fortunate to have two great role models in my life, and my grandfather and my dad, who really showed me what a man was supposed to look like, what a father was supposed to look like, and what a worker was supposed to look like.
I looked you up a little bit, and I know that you're a father, your husband, you have a family. I'm curious to hear how that upbringing informed your current role as a parent, as a partner, and maybe things that you kind of evolved into that maybe you didn't think about much when you were growing up.
I think first and foremost, the ability to feel and exhibit and share love was something that I think really changed for me when I had my first child, and it's been something that I've experienced now three times as a father of three. And there's people talk about the love that you get from a child or the love that you give to a child, but you really don't know what that really feels like until you're actually going through it. And receiving the attention that I get from my kids when I come home, the enjoyment that they have when they see me on television, or the enjoyment that they have when they see me in a public setting, um, especially in and around kind of my profession. It's something that you can't put a price tag on, and it's something you can't mimic, and it's something that you can't, really fathom until you actually go through it. And there's no type of preparation that my father or my grandfather could have gave me, other than being available for them. And for me, that is really like what I look forward to doing, and what I try to do as much as I possibly can is really just be there for them.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, I'm not a parent yet, but I can see that maybe in the next few years happening for me, hopefully. So it's really cool to just hear that from you. And shifting gears a little bit to talk about draft day for you. So I'm not very sharp on football, but I did do a little bit of research before our conversation. And I was just curious what thoughts were going through your head when you were at the draft and you were waiting for your name to be called.
I wasn't at the draft, so I was a day three guy. So was drafted on the last day, the wee hours of the evening, on day three of the draft. But I think what I was thinking was, one, I can't wait to see where I go. Two, I'm gonna find a way to get a job, which I ended up ultimately doing. And then lastly, how do I make a name for myself uh, based off of where I was drafted? And for me, that was something that I couldn't have dreamt of at this point, 13 years later, being drafted in 2012. But I think for me, it was the ability to understand the moment and embrace the moment, embrace the disappointment that I had at that time, and to channel it to finding ways to be a better player and a better worker, and a better teammate, to put myself in a position to not only win a job but keep a job for as long as I've been able to do so.
That's awesome. And while not everyone listening is in the NFL, including myself, I feel like a lot of people can relate to coming into a new environment and having something to prove or having a chip on their shoulder. So I'm curious, how did you go from 248th pick to starting and excelling in a very long and successful career in the NFL?
I always point to the people that were in the locker room while I was there. I had Heath Miller and Troy Polamalu, Ben Roethlisberger, James Harrison, Max Starks, Willie Colon, Marquise Pouncey, Ramon Foster, Marcus Gilbert, David DeCastro, Mike Adams, Will Allen, Ryan Mundy. I had just a phenomenal locker room of just great men that were there and available to help me as I was, wanting to make a name for myself, and wanting to make the team. And, when I look back on that time in my career, there's, yes, I had to put some work in, but I also think it was God ordained to have the type of people that I had in my environment to really support me and to help me and to show me the way. James Harrison teaching me how to take care of my body. Cam Hayward, being on the defensive side of the ball and somebody that I would, fight with every day for a couple of years. Brett Kiesel, who I would go up against in practice. Um, James Harrison, I would go up against in practice as well. Marquise Pouncey, who played the center position. Ramon Foster, who was, a late round. Well, he was undrafted, but ended up turning his career into 11 to 12 year career. Like, I just had really good people in and around me that helped mold me from a football standpoint. That gave me the ability to be a positive contributor to that team.
I think it's really cool that you're grateful for the people around you who helped you. And it sounds like, in that environment, and also from what I've read about you in other involvements in your life, I would kind of characterize you as a sponge as far as just soaking in knowledge and wisdom. It sounds like that applies to learning from other people around you. But I imagine that there's also a lot of things that are internally driven that you have to adopt for yourself. You have to remind yourself on a day to day level. So I'm curious how much of your learning, regardless of whether it's in football or not, is driven by just paying attention to the people around you, and what kind of work is more driven just from you and from your inner voice?
I think there was a combination of the two. I think that um, I'm internally motivated, so there's a lot of information that I receive or that I hear about that I take and I regurgitate and I find a way to apply to my life. But I'm also somebody that wants to go and seek knowledge from people that have done it before, that have done it at a high level, that have exceeded expectations, that have became successful when there may not have been success to be had. So I think it's a combination of what you are reading and what you're inputting into your own kind of ecosystem, your own chamber, versus what you can go out and glean from others who have been able to achieve some things that at the time may have been, somewhat difficult, but you're looking back at it and well, some may look back at it and be like, hey, it's easy now, but I don't think that if you look at what somebody was doing 20 years ago, 25 years ago was easy by any means. So to be able to hear from them, to glean from them, is something that I feel is just integrated into my DNA. So just this ability to want to be curious, this ability to want to be a lifelong learner. And it's boded well for me. And it's taken me places that I never thought I was capable of going, to be honest.
I really relate with wanting to learn all the time, and that's part of the ethos that I try to come into these conversations with as well. As much as I want to share things with other people, and while I'm doing that, I'm also just learning from everyone who I'm speaking with. So it's really cool to hear you articulate that. And I guess for those who don't know you, what are your involvements outside of football, and what does maybe a typical week in your life look like?
So the involvement outside of football is one, ending hunger both domestically and worldwide, access to clean water on the global front, and then access to science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. Those are the things that I really focus on philanthropically, was what I do off the field. Secondly, I spend a lot of time learning within the private equity market. So anything up and down the capital stack, whether that's pre-seed all the way up to LBOs and take private. So always finding ways to learn about what's going on in the private markets and what's going on within different capital structures, how those capital structures inform decisions, up the market, down the market, in the public markets, in the private markets, in the credit market, in the debt market, in the equity market. So really spent a lot of time just taking the time to learn in that particular regard. And as it pertains to what a typical week looks like, this week is probably the model kind of test run of a week. We've got our last preseason game Sunday in Denver. Monday, we came in much like we would do on a Monday after a game, and came in and lifted. I usually take meetings up until we lift, and then take meetings afterwards. I had a founder that was in town that came in Tuesday evening, ended up seeing him uh, Tuesday night while he was in town. Off day was Tuesday, so took calls all day Tuesday. Wednesday is a heavy day, kind of internally at the facility. So again, get up pretty early, try to take calls before workout start at 7 o'clock, and then meetings for the rest of the day from a football standpoint, practice and things of that nature. Try to be in bed by 8:30 every night, and then the following day, which was Thursday, again up fairly early, in the building, walking in the building around 5:30, trying to take meetings before I get in, especially those on the East Coast internationally, and then get ready for practice. Workout start at 7, team meeting or meeting start at 8 o'clock, and you're pretty much on and popping until we finish for practice. And then lastly, Fridays, they call it Fast Fridays. But again, pretty early, walking in the building 5:30, 5:45. Getting the hot tub, warm the body up, get ready for the workout at 7 o'clock. Finish up around 7:30. Go grab breakfast. Meeting started at 8, and we finished up around 11:15. Today, I had to go out to Scottsdale to get an injection in my knee, and now I'm sitting in front of my masseuse's house, about to go get a 2.5 hour massage, get the body beat up before we get ready to head to Denver. So it's pretty pragmatic with how the week goes, and very regimented and routine oriented.
Yeah, wow, that sounds really tough. It sounds like you're a very disciplined person. It takes a lot to be able to just be so professional, whether it's on the field, off the field. Just keep your body in check, keep your mind in check. So that's really inspiring to hear that. You've been on a few teams so far, and your career has been really long. So you've seen what other players are like as far as their routine, how they approach work-life balance, how they approach their commitments off the field. Would you say you're kind of an anomaly in that sense of doing so many different types of things while also pursuing your craft at the highest level?
I wouldn't say it's an anomaly. It's just something people don't talk about. I think many times the media or those in and around sports don't really dive into people's lives. But when you do, you actually be surprised that there's some very intellectually driven individuals that happen to play football. But they're not a quarterback or they're not a receiver, so it's not a conversation that's talked about widely. But obviously, there are a number of inquisitive and curious, smart individuals in and across the national football ranks that do amazing things with their day, and they're amazing fathers, they're amazing husbands. They happen to have great degrees, and they happen to spend their time wisely and spend their money wisely. And it's just not a conversation that's had a lot, but there are quite a few guys, I would say, across the National Football League that possess those types of qualities, and exhibit that type of discipline week in and week out. But to play in the National Football League, it requires discipline, and it requires a certain type of rigor. Um, and as you think about what you choose to do off the field, it requires a certain type of rigor as well. And there have been a number of guys that I think have done a really good job in doing so.
I'd be curious to kind of look into additional people's stories and learn about that as well. From my perspective, just hearing about all of your involvements, I thought that was absolutely incredible. It's cool to hear that that's not necessarily that there's each story is different, but that there's other
Yeah,
people doing cool things.
without
Um,
question. Justin Pugh, who just retired not so long ago, Devon Kennard, Brandon Copeland. Um, has got Chase Griffin, who's in college, who's done a phenomenal job of changing the narrative. Larry Fitzgerald, I think, has done a really good job in that particular regard. Justin Tuck, Marcus Coast, and I mean the list goes on and on with guys who've been able to transition in a very spectacular way that are impacting the business sector, and did so while playing, and now have transitioned in their lives and kind of went into this next phase of life in a very seamless manner.
Absolutely. And what do you think, whether it's football players or just athletes more generally, what would you say makes athletes so primed to make an impact in the business sector?
I think one, the ability to evolve. And I think the business world is continuing to evolve day in and day out, and I think there is no greater asset to a business than the ability to be coachable and to deal with the change that continues to take place. And if you spend time with any athlete, what they did 6 months ago is completely different than what they're doing right now. Now, conceptually, it may be on the same wavelength, but I would say the way in which they went about it has continued to change. So this ability to evolve, this ability to change, this ability to stay up to date with what's going on, I don't feel, well, I do feel that athletes are equipped in that regard, but I don't think the mass amount of people understand how athletes are situated within the concepts of being able to change and evolve with business, the ability to be coachable, the ability to be coached hard, the ability to take constructive criticism, and the ability to not be sensitive in the workforce environment because they've been coached hard, they've been pushed, and they've been pushed both physically and mentally. And I think if you're doing anything in business, you're going to be pushed both physically and mentally, whether you're tired and staying up late to have to work on something, whether what you're building is putting a massive strain on your mind. You know how to be able to compartmentalize to get the things done that you need to get done and to focus when you actually need to focus. And I think athletes are superior in that regard.
Absolutely. I spent some time in the military. Obviously, it's a different landscape from athletics, but I can resonate just a little bit with what you're describing. And I think it's an admirable trait. And I'm curious, we talked about things that make athletes, primed to succeed in business. Would you say that in your involvements outside of football, there's anything that you've had to unlearn as compared to, what you incorporate in your athletic career?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was unlearned, but I think what I've had to realize is that you got to go all the way back down to ground floor and start all the way over. And that's something I don't think athletes spend enough time thinking about is, when you graduate and you start playing in the National Football League or NBA or soccer, or you become a professional golfer or tennis player. When you left college, everybody else went into the business sector. They went to corporate sector. They went into consulting. They went to B school, what have you. So they've been able to actually work on their craft and work on their craft of business while you've been playing the sport that you choose to play. And I think what you have to unlearn or what you have to realize is you have to go all the way back down to the bottom floor and be able to work on some of those basic and those fundamentals that are needed to be essential, not only essential, but needed to make things seamless as you're doing some of those essential tasks and those essential items for said job that you happen to be a part of. So, I really feel that it's not really an unlearning, but I think it's the ability to humble oneself and to really bring oneself back to a place where you can, really come at it from a learning perspective to realize that, you have people that have spent the last decade, from my perspective, spent the last decade in the workforce. I haven't been in the workforce. I've been in and out, like learning, different trades and spending time with different firms and different people and different founders, different CEOs, etc. But at the end of the day, I haven't been, locked in for 10 months out of the year working strictly on one business use case.
Mhm.
So being able to go back to the ground floor and kind of start over, not start over, but start where in a place where, you have to come at it from a learning perspective.
And I think, regardless of whether you spend the entire year on one thing or whether you're kind of going in and out of it, that approach of just having a beginner's mindset, I
Right.
think is always productive. So it's cool to
No
hear that.
question. You got to be
Yeah.
a rookie all over again. All over
Yeah,
again. In each industry, you got to be a rookie all over again.
absolutely. Slightly different tone, but I'm curious if you could talk about, if you're comfortable with it, if you could kind of share what was your lowest point or biggest setback in your career.
Yeah, so probably the lowest point in my career, 2015. I uh, blew out my knee, so I had ACL, MCL, and meniscus all in one place. I had reconstructive surgery on my left knee. Was probably the lowest point in my career, but I also feel that it was a great segue to allow me to evolve and allow me to really find out who I was, and what I could add to what it is we play in the National Football League, and leave the little mark that I'm gonna leave while I've been in this game. But I would say that was probably be the lowest point that I've had in my career of playing football, but having that particular injury take place.
I'm assuming bouncing back from something like that is not only physically demanding, also mentally demanding. So I'm curious, how did you manage to put yourself in the right headspace to overcome something like that and to come back and perform at such a high level?
I sat on the couch for 9 days and felt sorry for myself and ate pecan pie for 9 days and had a couple apple pies that I had shipped up from Texas from Whataburger. And then after that, I pulled my britches up and I found a way to get to work. Nobody is going to come and save you. Nobody's going to feel sorry for you. Nobody cares, to be honest with you. And that's just the reality of life. So the only person that cares and that matters is yourself. So you got to find a way to go and fight and go and perform, not for somebody else, but for your own merit and for what you want to be able to accomplish. And I had a family at the time, had my daughter, had a wife. So I was doing something that was bigger than me, but I also wanted to make sure that I showed my family and my kids what it was like to bounce back from something that traumatic.
Absolutely. And I feel like you might have touched on it in that response, but maybe to just reframe the question a little bit in a different direction. As I repeated a few times, not everyone listening is an NFL player, but we all deal with struggles in different kind of variations and at different intensity levels. So, is there a particular lesson from your injury that you think is applicable for people listening in just other areas of life that you could share?
Spend time with people that matter. That will be the lesson that I got from that. And that's something that I cherish quite a bit is spend time with people that matter. And, you're going to go and, you're going to do well in whatever you choose to do from a business standpoint or, whether you're mid career, early career, getting ready to retire, you've had the opportunity to do some amazing things. But at the end of the day, you got to spend time with people who matter. And those are the people that love you the most. And I would say during that point in time, that was the biggest lesson that I learned from that is spend time with the people that matter. And the people that matter are, my wife, my kids, my family. And it taught me a lot. Something that I think about quite a bit. I mean, even as I'm, preparing for some travel after training camp is over, I'm working to spend time with people that matter. That's my family. That's my wife and kids. And, taking the time to sow into their development and sow into memories that I want to be able to sear in their head for the next, 30 or 40 years of their life as well.
That's beautiful. And what would you say about that injury solidified that for you? Was it just being at home more or just, I don't know, the support that you got from certain people versus other people?
I think it was more just a realization. I mean, I don't think there was anything different that occurred. I mean, my mom came in, my parents came in. My wife was super available, and made sure that I was taken care of in that regard. But I would say, it was more of a realization than it was anything. And I think it was just a really good reset. I've been in the league 4 years. Maybe I was starting to get a little big headed, and that took me back down to ground zero, and I started all over. I was a rookie all over again. But I would say the realization was really, of the situation, of the magnitude, and of what I really wanted to do, and where I really wanted to go in life. And I think it was a really good opportunity for me to be able to do that. So I don't regret, the decision that was made prior to that season. I don't regret the injury that occurred. I don't regret what happened afterwards. I think, and I still believe it's probably one of the best things that happened to me. But when you ask the question of what was the lowest part of my career, it's also the lowest part. So you have high highs and low lows, and you never know whether those high highs are really great for you, or whether those low lows are really bad for you.
Yeah, it's kind of like the cliche of turning lemons into lemonade. And I think,
Without question.
yeah, I love how you overcame that. And it's really cool to hear your reflections on it. Slightly different topic, but I'm curious. There's often advice to prioritize breadth or depth, that like there's a trade off of doing too much and then you're not really specializing in anything, or kind of being hesitant to go all in on something because then you're missing out on something else. And I feel like finding a balance is really hard, or just choosing where you are in that kind of trade off is also pretty difficult. So I'm curious, how do you view that trade off? And like, when is it right to double down versus when do you think it's productive to branch out and do different things?
I think you have to take the time to go and explore and to go and discover what you like and what you don't like, and where you want to go deep and where you don't want to go deep. And until you actually know that, it's hard to know whether if you're going deep is that the right thing to do. So I think first and foremost, you have to take the time to go and explore and go and learn. For me, I took that time, spent time in real estate, spent time in oil and gas, spent time in media, spent time doing things philanthropically until I realized what I really wanted to do. And I would say, after the injury, I think that helped me understand what I really wanted to do and where I wanted to focus. So I would say take the time to go and explore and go and experiment first and foremost to see what you like and what you don't like, and find out what those passion areas are. And I would say now that I've found what those passion areas are, and there are a number of them, I go really deep in those passion areas. I love, I mentioned the things that I do philanthropically. I love those two arenas. So I go very, very deep in those two arenas. Those are very, very vast arenas. Ending hunger. That is a very hard statement to actually even say because it is something that is systematic and ingrained in society right now. But I want to be a part of the solution to help folks who may not have access to food, access to clean water. Like there's still billions of people on the planet that don't have access to clean water. That is a big problem that I can work on for the rest of my life. So I know exactly what I want to be. I mentioned STEAM. I love the arts. Like I love technology. Those are, gigantic ecosystems. So I continue to learn and continue to grow in those particular ecosystems. I love cattle. I'm a country boy at the end of the day. I love getting on a four wheeler. I love going out, shooting hogs and being out in the country, like and doing, hillbilly stuff. Like I love that. Like that is built into my fabric. That is something that I enjoy doing. So how do I make sure that I have a good sense of how my land is constructed, how my fences are constructed, how my ponds are constructed, how often am I, putting, new types of fish into my ponds. If I ever want to expand those ponds, how do I want to expand those ponds? If I ever want to, add a couple acres to what I already have, what does it look like? Like, I'm very intimate with that particular conversation. So, you find out what it is that you actually like and what you have a passion for, and you spend time there. And I wouldn't say that, I'm missing out on anything because I can't do everything. What I love
Mhm.
to do, I do. And what I can't do, I can't do. And I mean, you
Yeah.
got to be cool with that. And you got to be cool with being comfortable in your own skin. And I think, I've come to the point where I'm very comfortable with exactly who I am and I know where I can and can't go.
And I think that kind of curiosity and exploration is contagious. Even just reading about your story got me even more pumped about exploring new things and really branching out and also kind of understanding what my passions are. So hearing you articulate that is really helpful in my opinion. I'll just keep us to like maybe two more questions if that's cool.
Cool.
So if you could go back to chat with younger Kelvin, let's say on draft day, and share just a piece of advice with him, what would you want to share with him?
Enjoy the moment. Enjoy all of it. Relish it. Not that I didn't, but there's always so many other nuggets that you can find during those times. And for me, it's one of those things where I just want to, and I would have told myself just enjoy that moment.
Is that focused on that specific moment or just more generally as an idea of just enjoying the moment, in life?
I think overall, just enjoying the moment in life. I mean, it's a big deal to get drafted. It's a big deal to be even in the conversation to be drafted. So just enjoying that moment and everything that comes with it. Don't think I reflected enough during that time. Don't think I wrote how I felt and what I was thinking during that time enough. So just taking the time to really enjoy it.
Absolutely. So last question that I have for you for today. Is there anything else on the topic of life change or of just pursuing our passions that you would like to leave us with?
I think life will always change. And if you're willing to do what's necessary to continue to succeed, you will be able to withstand everything that comes with life. And I think the term that young folks are using now is life be life. And I'm like, yes, life is life. But the question is are you mentally ready for the challenge? Are you physically ready for the trauma that it may cause? And are you built for it? Built for it tough. Like are you built for it? And if you're built for it, you can be just fine. And I think, when you think about the life transitions, those things are going to occur. You got to be ready to roll with the punches and you got to be ready to thrive in those moments.
Absolutely. I really appreciate all your wisdom. For anyone who wants to just keep up with your doings, maybe follow you somewhere, is there an ideal place to follow you to keep up with your work?
Yeah. LinkedIn, IG, Twitter. Those are the best places to find me.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time and for your agreement to speak with me. I learned a ton from even just the research about you, but even more so from the conversation. So I really appreciate it.
Anytime, brother.